Hey friends, welcome to Conversations. My name is Crystal Ellington and I'm the director of Walnut Hill Online. Tonight we're continuing our conversations in the theme of On the Other Side of Yes, and we're going to be talking about compassion and unity. And I say we because I have two friends with me tonight. I have Pastor John Dissinger here. He's a pastor here at Walnut Hill and he oversees Church in Action. And since our church has a passion for reaching the most vulnerable, we extend that outside the four walls into our community as well as 22 other countries, he told me. And at last count, he said 33 ministries we support as a church touch 9 million people around the world. That's just really incredible numbers. And Church in Action for our church is like mission. So if you're from another church and you're not used to Church in Action, it's our missions ministry. I also have Charnel Bush here with me tonight. He's a youth leader at Waterbury campus. And actually, he's been a part of ministry at Walnut Hill for about 20 years through mentorship and other ministries we have. So we're so glad that you're here with us tonight. Thank you so much for joining me and for being willing to do this conversation with me. So let's just dive in. We've been talking about compassion and unity, and on Sunday, Brian talked about compassion and unity and a powerful message. So if you missed it, go to our YouTube channel, click subscribe first, and then watch the video, okay? That's just my little plug there. But as we dive into this conversation, I want to define compassion first, as Brian wrote it in his book. He said, it's entering the suffering of others and being ready to help. It means actively engaging in the brokenness of the world and being ready to help. So my question for you, and we'll start with you, John, is how can you tell me about a time where you said yes to compassion or experienced someone else's yes to compassion?
Yeah, thank you, Crystal. As you had mentioned in the introduction, I'm really blessed with the opportunity here at Walnut Hill to really see all those 33 ministries that you mentioned in action. And, you know, at the core of all of those ministry partners is a passion to come alongside the lost, the vulnerable, and the disenfranchised. And at the root of that is a compassion for all people around the world. So as I've been thinking about this question, it was hard for me to kind of nail down one particular example where I've seen compassion at work. But one does come to mind that really was kind of life-changing for me. And it was 2 years ago, my wife Karen and I had the opportunity to travel to the Democratic Republic of Congo, the DRC. And we spent about a week there with a team from World Relief, the staff. They are all Congolese. And we were brought back up into this northern province in the DRC that quite honestly was pretty dicey. Fairly dangerous because of some of the conflict minerals that are being mined and some of the other interactions going on. There was a lot of guerrilla activity. So it's really a dangerous place to be for individuals. But then on top of that was at the beginning of the outbreak of Ebola in that particular area of the DRC. We went back up to this northern province and spent 3 days with the staff. And this was a community of about 20 staff with World Relief, between the ages of 25 and 35. And this was a community that just kind of blew me away because they were so fired and inspired to be out with their community, bringing programs like Savings for Life, village peace committees, and one ministry in particular around caring for women who had been the subject of gender-based violence, sexual gender-based violence, unfortunately all too common in the DRC. My answer to your question is the compassion that I saw in this community of brothers and sisters that were working together. I know we're going to talk about unity later. Was really life-altering for me as an American. It really humbled me to see the depth of commitment and compassion that these individuals, every morning they would wake up, they would get on their bikes or they'd get on their motor scooters and they go back out into the villages to bring these programs and support to the communities. And they were just so humble about it. And so as we drove back to the border of the DRC, Karen and I, we were just commenting on in a way I felt almost embarrassed because I saw a level of compassion and care that was kind of paled in what I do pales in comparison to what I saw and experienced with them. And so that just jumps right back out into my mind as you ask that question. The other one that I'd mention real quick is right here in our own community, is the compassion I've seen since March. Right. If you were to come here, as I know you do because you come for rehearsals, right? On Wednesdays, we would have a community of 100+ volunteers come on Wednesdays to feed the hungry. And if you were to ask all of those 100 volunteers why they're here to do that on Wednesday afternoons, it is because of their love for Jesus and the love for the hungry in our community. And the compassion just abounds. Right. It's palatable, but it's humble compassion. And I think none of them would say, I want others to know I'm doing this. I think they would all say, I don't speak about this in any bragging rights whatsoever. Right. The only way I'll speak about it is to invite a friend to come so they can experience it. Right. So I'm proud to be a part of that community and see compassion in action right here. And the final thought on that is, I love where in Brian's book he talks about compassion from the perspective of, we see, right, and then we feel. But I think the challenge for us is that next step of, do we move? Right? It's easy to see, and then it's feel, but where God really starts to call us and challenge us to step into the other side of yes is, are we going to move on that call to compassion? And it's an exciting thing to see.
Just one quick question. If someone was interested in volunteering with the food bank, what would they do, or what should they do now that you've piqued their interest?
Oh, sure.
What should they do? Who should they contact?
They should contact, they can contact either myself or Renee Sherrick.
Okay.
Or just call the front desk here at the church,
right.
and we'll get them connected.
Exactly. So if you call the church and you're local and you want to serve at the food bank, it's the most incredible thing I've ever seen. Pallets of food being handed out to hundreds of families. Honestly, I've never seen such a well-oiled machine before. So please, if you're interested, contact the church, or you could probably email hello@walnuthillcc.org, and your email will get forwarded to just the right person, probably John or Renee, who will love to help you and connect you with this beautiful ministry that we have going on here in the community. So, Charnel, tell me about compassion.
Yeah, I don't know if I can follow that.
Sure.
No, I'm not one for catchphrases, but you brought it up. With my youth a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about, like, you're aware, but do you care? Mm-hmm. And we see a lot of things, I think, as believers, and we just don't do a lot in some instances unless it directly impacts us. And I don't have a story of compassion on such a macro level like John does, which is impressive, right? It almost motivated me to hop on a plane.
I know, right?
Come with me.
Right. Hey, let me know. But I actually have a couple stories too. As you were talking, it kind of reinvigorated the feelings I had as a young kid. And the first time I experienced true compassion, Crystal mentioned that I had experienced a mentorship. My mentor was a member of Walnut Hill, Bill Beatty. And I had met him one time, and I always use this as my aha moment about God too. Like, God gives you those little moments where you're like, oh, I am real.
Right.
Like, remember that.
Yeah.
And I'm still very much alive and still very much watching. And at a time where I was in foster care, I met Bill Beatty once at Squan's Pond for a cookout, and then we were being matched to be mentor and mentee, and I was like, perfect, right? I was like, this old white guy knows nothing about me, but we're gonna try it, right? And we're gonna talk about unity too at some point.
Right.
And so we met the one time, and then months later, my life imploded. Like, my mom lost custody of me and my sister, and we ended up getting split up, and I was in a group home.
Oh no.
And I was having a tough time, as you would imagine a kid would. And I was having a particularly tough night. I had a phone call, and I thought it was my social worker. I was like, I don't want to hear from anyone. Like, tell them they can call me tomorrow. And she's like, no, you might want to take this call. Like, it's important. And I thought, no, it's an emergency. Something happened to my mom, whatever. Wrong. It was Bill Beatty.
Wow.
Who had met me one time and had moved heaven and earth to find me
Wow.
to encourage me and pray for me. And it was one of those moments where I was like, wow, look at God move.
Right.
You know, and for me, like, that is compassion, to be so aware of a situation, or to be ready to be an active participant in someone's life, and you're not even there yet, and to see things happening and to step in. I think that's mind blowing.
Wow.
And here we are, like 20 years later. I was
Right.
9 years old. You know?
Wow.
And so seeing that also like pushed me to be a little bit more compassionate and to be active in communities and be looking out for the people who are less than, right, for the least of these.
Right.
And because of that, I started doing youth ministry.
Oh.
And it wasn't until I started actively doing ministry when I realized that you don't always agree or get along with all the people that you work with in the church. Usually it's the coffee before and after service. So you think we're friends. And it wasn't until about 3 or 4 years ago where I met one of my best friends in youth ministry. I kind of actually met him in the pew accidentally. I was just friendly. So I was like, hey, how's it going? You've been here a few times. And we started chatting after service. And then a few months in, we realized that we had some like really strong differing political beliefs, and that's fine. But it made it really hard for us to see how the other loved Jesus and believed things. And so
Right.
what the compassion was is that we both looked at each other and knew that like we love Jesus.
Yeah.
And at this point, I convinced him, tricked him into doing youth ministry. And it's like, we love Jesus, and we love kids, we love serving. Like, let that be the thing that we focus on. But in our own time, let's like actually put compassion in action, and let's learn about why we think the things we do, where we come from. Tell me what your growing up looked like.
Right.
And so we had some really tough conversations, ones where I said dumb things and he said some dumb things. But I think compassion really boils down to being that active participant in someone else's life, and acknowledging when things are going to move and when things are going to shift, and growing with them, so that way that keeps you together.
Right.
And allows the work to get done.
That's so awesome. I love that you're involved with the youth ministry, and they get to see some of that, unity unfolding. Like, they really need to see that, because honestly, if they're like the high school students I used to teach, they're on Facebook and TikTok and YouTube all the time, and they see all the garbage that's out there. They really need to see that, like, togetherness, working together no matter what kind of circumstance. So I love youth ministry. It's like my second. I love online, but it's youth ministry second, like close second. I love those kids. That age group is just so great.
Signed up for it.
Right,
I know.
Someone's listening. I'm listening. You want to make the ride?
It's such a great group, and you're really poised to help the next generation do better than what we've been doing, honestly. And so I commend you, seriously. That's really awesome. As we kind of alluded to, we're also going to talk about unity tonight. And in his book, Brian said, unity has its source in the presence of God through the gift of the Holy Spirit. The early church displayed unity because they shared the same spirit and had everything in common. Now, don't think that this meant that unity means sameness. That's kind of Charnel kind of alluded to. It doesn't mean that we all have to look the same and speak the same language even sometimes, or wear the same clothes, or have the same ideologies and political views. That's not necessarily unity. We're talking about being filled with the Spirit and walking together because we love Jesus. So, Charnel, tell me about unity.
I can tell you about it. No, I think we were kind of talking a bit off mic, but unity for me is kind of the first step to compassion. Right? There's always something that brings people to the same table. And usually in church, it's Jesus, right? Worshiping together is the thing that brings you to the table, but what is it that would keep you there? And so it doesn't have to be sameness. I actually glory in the fact that I'm nothing like my friends here at church, right? And so it doesn't have to be sameness, doesn't have to be assimilation. It just has to be a willingness, again, to actively participate.
Right.
And so when I think of unity, I think of one, cooperation, right? Actively like looking at other people and saying, all right, so you fit here, I fit here. That's a strength, that's a weakness. Let's do this together.
Right.
And so I want to say this right without without being inflammatory, but I think that the real power behind unity isn't forgetting what's happening either. Like, it's the compassionate piece where we all try to forget about people's troubles. But I think the compassionate piece also talks to the things that we view as gifts or as blessings that also make us blind to other things, or make us aloof or disinterested in the lives of others. Because we could talk about how misfortune is poverty or hunger. But at the same time, your prosperity and your education and your access could be the thing that keeps you from looking.
That's right.
So it's how are we really like removing these blinders to do that? So really for unity, it's keep the main thing, which is Jesus.
Right.
Right. And just because you're unified does not mean you have to agree on everything. I had a Sunday school lesson on Sunday about this kind of ebbing and flowing. Like there are going to be people you're going to be connected to that you won't always be with. So it's going to be more of a, you work together for a goal, come back together again. It's sometimes going to look like DNA. This is not, it's not always a straight line.
I like the double helix. I'm a science major, so I do exactly what you meant.
Social science.
I meant to read Ephesians chapter 4, verses 15 and 16. It says, "Instead we will speak the truth in love, growing in every way more and more like Christ, who is the head of his body, the church. He makes the whole body fit together perfectly. As each part does its own special work, it helps the other parts grow so that the whole body is healthy and growing and full of love."
Yep.
And that's exactly what you were saying, is that, yeah, just because we have different views, but you recognize other people's gifts and that they fit together. It's like a puzzle. It really, the kingdom of God really is a puzzle. Like I have things that you don't have, you have things that I don't have. So we have to work together to make the complete puzzle come together. And it doesn't matter what you look like, what language you speak, your political affiliations or beliefs or whatever. It's just important that we acknowledge each other, that compassion, and make unity kind of our goal. And unity is in Jesus.
Yeah.
Coat of many colors.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a great, I was thinking thank you, great example came to my mind in terms of that same exact trip that I was talking about to the Congo. We had the opportunity to then travel to Rwanda. And again, another major partner of ours is in Rwanda, and the Church of Rwanda. We were back in a district in southeast Rwanda, and I spent an afternoon with 30 pastors. The interesting thing about unity in this discussion is these 30 pastors were all from different denominations. And we gathered in this church in this district of, it's called Ngoma, and we had a whole variety of backgrounds and denominations. And what was amazing is this community of pastors had been working together for years, shedding their denominational differences and coming together with Jesus at the center, all very strong in their faith, but that one uniting point being Jesus, and committing to bring healing and restoration to their community that they lived in the aftermath of the genocide in Rwanda. And the interesting thing in this case, Crystal, was we had in this community of pastors, 30 pastors there. We knew we had individuals who were from the former Hutu tribe and former Tutsi tribe sitting together, and with a very distinct possibility that there were acts of aggression against their families from some present. All of that had been amazingly shed with the conviction of the power of coming together, dismembering that label that they lived under for years, and instead coming under that one identity, that one name, Jesus, and that becoming the basis and root for that unity. And I think you were really implying that. You were saying that unity without Jesus just doesn't compute to me.
Right.
It just doesn't compute. And compassion without unity doesn't compute either. So you have Jesus, unity, compassion. They're all so intricately linked. And it's really a thrill, to see it in action.
Right.
We also know when it's not.
Right.
Yeah,
We
very clear
also
when it's not.
we also know when it's not. And
So I'm just going to call an audible here and ask you a question I didn't plan on asking.
Sure.
So for both of you, what would you advise our church to do? Like, we are facing some kind of like really disunified nation. This election season has been particularly contentious.
Yeah.
And it can, cause us to not keep the main thing, like you said, Charnel. And so what would you advise us as, this body, because we want to be united. And now what we're saying is that if we're not, it's not going to work. we have to be together so we can move the kingdom forward, to take back some of that darkness for Jesus, right? So what do you think the steps are? What do you think the things that, what are the maybe even the barriers to us being completely unified as a body?
I guess I can go first. One of the things that I love about being flawed, like being human, right, being a Christ follower and trying to live up to that example, is being able to say I don't know or I'm wrong. And I think that a lot of churches feel that they have to find one thing and hold on to it because that's right. But even Paul says that we look through a glass darkly, right?
Yeah.
That God will reveal all to us, but right now we don't know. And so one thing I would do is say, look for knowledge, right? My people perish for lack of vision, and so I'm thinking, like, you look for knowledge, and that's not the right verse I'm going to quote, but we're here. And but it's knowledge my people are destroyed, yeah. And I just feel like we need to really seek out what other people are feeling. Like, people are just feeling different things so differently. And it's because we all don't know what the other's feeling. That's a compassionate piece to that, right? Where we're looking at the other side. We're talking the amount of racial tension that's in the United States right now. Like you said, it's contentious election season, right? We're all looking at other people and saying, well, we've got it right and you're clearly wrong.
Right.
And I think unity is such a charged term sometimes because it insists that one of us still has the same amount to go, and we all believe that the other person has more than us to go.
Right.
And so I would say start those conversations, start seeking not just the truth, which is Jesus and all that he is, but the truths that other people are living in. That my grandma would say that when we're all talking about Jesus, we're all not talking about the same person. That we're all encountering Jesus for different needs, and some of us will never know Jesus personally to be a healer. But we know he does it, but we don't know him to be that.
Right.
But I do. I know him to be a comforter and a provider, but you might not know him to be those things. But I just feel like we should be seeing and looking for the Jesus and the Jesus that other people are looking to do that. The other thing, in the same vein, is actually, it's a Marvel quote, so guys don't judge me. But I thought it's a Marvel movie quote. I just thought it was powerful. I've been a church boy all my life. So I always look at it as that preaches all the time. But in one of the Captain America movies, one of the characters is asking another character kind of, who are you? Like, who am I supposed to believe you are? And she says, well, the truth isn't all things to all people all the time. And I was thinking that so many of us are walking these lines and so many of us are walking with blinders on. And that is our truth. This way is the way. It's right, Jesus is the truth, but we all have our own specific, what we believe to be truths. Right. And once we start learning that, like I mentioned earlier about my friend who we had differing political beliefs, I learned what his truth was. And his truth was that he wanted to love people well, the best way he could in a way that they would get it, the way they would understand. And I was like, well, me too. You're just going about it a different way.
Right.
And that doesn't mean that we can't get along. Well, we do now. I was his best man, things God works in strange ways. But I just truly believe it's an intentional commitment to connection.
Okay.
Amen.
That's good. So you'd say intentionality, and going back maybe a couple weeks talking about forgiveness and overlooking other people's offenses and stuff like that. You can't have unity unless you're willing to have those hard conversations you're saying. And then if someone says something dumb, not holding it against them.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
You got to be able to take some licks. You're already at the table. Like I said, you want to stay there. If you agree to come to the table together, that means you're committed already.
Yeah.
You got to be willing to take those.
And you're agreeing to listen.
Exactly. Even if it hurts.
Right.
2 ears and 1 mouth.
Right. More listen. That's good. 2 ears and 1 mouth. Hope you guys heard that. Okay.
Pastor Jim, when I became a care pastor here, that's one of the first things he said. John, remember, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth, and the power of listening is so important when you're meeting with people. The other thing that kind of, as you were talking, is let's not forget. And Brian said this very clearly on Sunday morning. Let's not forget that third point and most important point. We live under a kingship. King Jesus is on the throne.
Amen.
And in a kingdom is not a democracy.
That's right.
And I think we had that conversation as well with Jan when during part of the conversations, is that I personally, let me say me, have to always remember that first and foremost, I serve him. And when I enter into conversations, I need to really pray about remembering that and curbing my tongue and my quick response, because I do have a tendency to respond too quickly. And remember that it's King Jesus that I serve, and that he will give me, he's my guide.
Right.
The other thing, just on a practical point, note right now, and I'll share again, just me personally, if this is of value to anyone, is I was challenged at a men's dinner the other night, a couple weeks ago, to fast when we were talking about prayer and fasting.
Right.
To fast from the news.
Yeah.
And I've really been trying to practice that, Crystal, because it's so easy for me to get sucked into the news. And then I find my blood pressure just starts to go. And all sorts of agita begins to occur. And it's not healthy, and it's not going to change anything. And so I've been really focused on, as much as I possibly can, just turn it off.
Yeah.
Not to say don't engage in conversation. I think that's really important. But I think sometimes we get into conversations that really are meaningless, debating things that are meaningless. And so I'd rather talk about Jesus.
Yeah.
As trite as that sound or whatever.
No, it's so true, because I was in my small group, and I can't remember, it was Tim Mathewson was in my group for my On the Other Side of Yes group, and he basically said you should interpret everything with the lens of the Bible. Yeah. Because I had been saying that I've been spending too much time on social media and the news, like you were saying, and that actually the Lord called me to fast all electronical things for a day, and I felt so much better.
Yeah,
it was amazing.
It was true.
So everyone, please take some time off your phone after conversations is over, obviously, and then take some time to really just disengage from the news, and then actually read your Bible, pray more. The Lord convicted me because I've been spending more time watching the news, reading the news, tweets, the crazy stories, following people's nonsense on Facebook, and not as much time in my Bible. So when I flipped that, it was freeing. I felt like so much better physically, spiritually. You feel that heaviness when you read too much news.
Very true.
Like in this season, if you're feeling that heaviness and being overwhelmed with sadness and fear and anxiety, put your phone down, open your Bible, pray. Because I'm telling you that stuff is kind of toxic to us right now.
And it lacks compassion. Let's get back to that point.
Exactly.
It lacks compassion. And when we take Jesus out of compassion, it's almost like there's a peace that comes with compassion when it's entrenched in the Word and in Jesus. There's a calming peace there.
Exactly.
That we experience, and I found the only place you can get it from is
Jesus.
Jesus.
Right. I think part of our visceral or our spiritual reactions to some of that disunity is because God meant us to all be together. We were never intended to be like this. It's just happened because we live in a fallen world and we're fallen people until Jesus returns, and then hip, hip, hooray, everything's better. But I think some of these pains that we feel now, it's not because this person's wrong and I'm right. It's because this was not how we were meant to live. Yeah. And so I just thank God for a community like this that is talking about having unity, talking about compassion, and for you guys putting the two together. That compassion and unity they're hand in hand, they're friends. You can't really do unity without compassion. And if you have compassion, you're going to see unity. So I think this has just been such a lovely conversation. And I hope that you feel uplifted and have more conversation about this in your groups this week, or even email me or the church. Ask us questions about compassion and unity. We would love to continue the conversation, because this is something that's so important to us as a body, so we can have his kingdom come and his will be done on earth as it is in heaven. This is our mission here, to spread the love of Jesus, like Brian said this morning, or Sunday morning rather. So friends, thank you so much for joining us for Conversations. It's been such a lovely time here with John and Charnel. I hope you were blessed. I hope you feel challenged to put the phone down, to reach across the table, to talk to someone who looks different than you or might think differently than you. And don't just assume because they think differently than you that they don't love Jesus, because that really pushed me, Charnel, when you said that. Like, some people think that if you think differently than them or you have different political views that you don't love Jesus. I'm going to tell you that's wrong. We have to listen to each other. So have compassion and listen to one another. So we love you so much. Don't forget, we have church on Sundays at 9, 11, and 7 p.m. online. And we have in-person services as well. You can check that out at walnuthillonline.org. And that's it for tonight. God bless you. We'll see you soon.